Hi, my name is Stephen McGee and I'm the author of Toxic Electricity. And we're here to talk about one of the subjects of toxic electricity, and that is plant growth problems. And this is a follow-up video from a video I did a few months ago, actually 2 months ago. It's actually the end of September right now. And I did a video at the end of July showing you the plants in my garden and how they were retarded from wireless radiation. Now, the interesting thing is, for about 2 months now, I took out a bunch of wireless radiation devices from service, and I was watching my plants, and they've come back to life, quite a few of them, and it's quite surprising how well they're doing. This one right here has actually put up a huge amount of vertical growth. I noticed this particular plant was growing low to the ground and wouldn't grow up. Well, that's now changed, and it's got all these upward shoots coming up on it now. So it's amazing the difference in the plants. Now this one, almost immediately after taking out the wireless devices from service, this came back to life. This has been pretty much dormant for many years. It's a fruit tree, and it's now back growing. And I tried many things with this plant. I was playing around with irrigation levels, increasing them and decreasing them, and also fertilization, and I could not get this plant to grow. And simply by taking out my wireless devices from service, it's now growing. So let's see what else we've got. Now, over here, this, I believe, is a peach tree. And if you look at these leaves, they're actually new growth. And this new growth popped up almost immediately after taking out the wireless devices from service. And the interesting thing is, it looks like the old growth is actually in the process of dying off. And it's been replaced by this new growth. And I haven't been able to get this plant to grow for years, and it's now showing plenty of growth. So that was a nice surprise. And down here we can see this climbing plant has now taken off now that the wireless devices are out of service. So over here, this plant right here has now put up this new growth, and it's very like what it should be. And the way it was growing in the past is down here. Very small growth compared to the way it should grow, which is like this. So this one appears to be starting to catch up its twin, which is over here. And this is now taller than the wall. So this is actually put on a growth spurt as well. So the interesting thing about this wireless radiation is that it's patchy. So what you get is you get some plants that do really well and will grow into very tall plants very quickly, and then you get others that are stunted and grow much less. And one of the things that I noticed was this plant. Now if you look down here, this plant was covered in leaves, and what happened when the wireless devices were taken out of service was it dropped all of its leaves. They were growing in a very dark green pattern, and they were very small in comparison to this kind of growth as what it should look like. So this plant was a much darker green version. It was somewhat a miniature version. And then the wireless systems went out of service, And what happened was all this new growth replaced it. So this is all brand new growth that has occurred since the wireless devices were taken out of service. And this was the plant out of this bunch that the effect was most noticeable in. As you can see now, it's actually a very healthy plant. But the original growth, for some reason, it dropped it. And one of the things that I've noticed with dormant plants is that they give the appearance of being alive, but they don't actually grow. And it's very apparent in this plant. And what they do is they get new leaves every year, they get blossoms, and they get fruit. But what happens is the fruit, as it starts to grow, the plant simply drops them. And they're basically infertile, these plants, and don't grow any fruit other than small buds which get rejected. And they just go through the usual cycles, but they don't actually do anything. They don't put any major growth into the plant, so they just sit there like stunted plants every year. So let's see what else we can find. So over here, this plant used to look like this one. As you can see, it's a much more stunted version. In fact, it's almost unrecognizable. Now, one of the things that I noticed was up here, there used to be a wireless weather station device up on the top corner of the door, and I took it out of service. And after it was taken out of service, I put this plant here, and this one's doing okay. So it appears that this plant was actually deformed, possibly by that wireless device that used to be up on the top corner of that door, which is about 10 feet away. But this plant doesn't seem to be showing any of the characteristics that this one did. It seems to be right now actually happily growing now that the wireless devices at the house have been taken out of service. So over here, in the last video you can't actually see this plant because it was so small. And I've been trying for a year or two to get this plant to grow, and it was about perhaps 6 inches in the last video. It's now actually about 2 foot tall. So it's put on a lot of growth in just a couple of months, and I'm quite shocked at how vigorous this has grown since the wireless devices were taken out of service. Now over here, this is a pomegranate tree, and this burst into life when the wireless devices got taken out of service. And it's put on major growth, and prior to the wireless devices being taken out of service, it was essentially dormant. It wasn't really doing anything. And again, it got fruits but then dropped them. They didn't actually go on to develop into full-size fruits. And again, I was playing around with fertilizer and irrigation on this plant, trying to get it to grow. And the most effective thing that I found is taking the wireless devices out of service was what this plant needed to grow. And over here, this plant has actually burst into life, and also the one in front of it. So the garden on a whole has actually come back to life. I'm actually quite shocked at how well the garden is actually doing right now. And this has all occurred in just 2 months of no wireless devices at the property. Now you might remember this plant down here. This was a tree that I've been trying to grow. It wasn't doing very well. All that's changed, and now it's about 3 foot tall. So this one is definitely showing positive effects from no wireless devices at the house. And this one over here, it was just growing low. It wouldn't grow up vertically. And as you can now see, it's decided to start growing upwards. And this is a few years old. And it would not grow more than about 2 foot tall. And it's just been spreading out along the ground instead of growing upwards. And as you can see, in just 2 months we've got plenty of upwards growth coming out of this plant. And you'll notice the climbers on the wall behind. The climbing vines seem to be particularly sensitive to wireless radiation and are now growing. This is another fruit tree right here. As you can see, in just 2 months it's actually grown to twice the size, and I couldn't get this plant to grow. It's another one that I was playing around with irrigation and fertilizer, nothing but make it grow, but taking the wireless devices out of service, it's now growing. As you can see, the garden in general is doing very, very well, and I am at the conclusion right now that these wireless devices that I had in service at my home were actually quite toxic to these plants, and it matches the research performed by Dr. John Nash Ott in his books and films on the subject. And the last plant I want to show you in the back garden is this one down here. This one was just sitting there, wasn't really doing anything, and it's now burst into life, is now growing upwards, and it's actually doubled in size in just 2 months. And this is very, very close to where my automatic reading meter used to be, and that has now been changed out to a conventional mechanical meter. And this plant is certainly showing the benefits of being in a lower radiation environment. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I wish you the very best of health. Thank you.